Hello, Ralph. Welcome, and thanks so much for being with us today. So I suppose the best place to start is probably right at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. What were your sort of earliest musical memories? Did you grow up in a particularly musical household? What were they? How young did you start sort of getting into music?
Well, I lived in a household where my parents had said before they met, whoever they are, they've got to love music. So they both loved music, and they produced 5 children who love music. And we love making it as well. But it's the love of it and the joy that comes of it that is the greatest. And that is something, with all the reading and investigating I've done, that I haven't really understood why we love it and why it makes us feel better. I was lucky enough to go to the local state grammar school, Tiffin School, which we chose simply because it was musical. My father was a mathematician and physicist, research scientist at nearby Admiralty Research Laboratory. And he encouraged me in this, of course, because it was so musical. And I just was so happy I went there, because I couldn't believe the experiences that that wonderful school gave. And it was there that I knew about choral scholarships and about the opportunity to sing, and no messing around with repertoire. We sang the big stuff and got it right, you know, and sang it well. And there were passionate teachers.
Well, on that note, I mean, passionate teachers at Tiffin's was renowned for its singing. Are there any teachers in particular that you can remember that really inspired you? I suppose a lot of the work you do and the work you have done has been teaching and vocal leading and directing and things like that. Were there any teachers that really got you inspired into doing that? Do you think you've retained any of those particular qualities yourself? What have you brought forward from those inspiring teachers?
Well, David Neal, who was there, who had been in Durham, and he came straight down to Tiffin and was there for his whole life because he didn't want to go anywhere else because it was so good, and he was brilliant. And really inspiring academic teacher as well as conductor. He took over from somebody whose departure we lamented terribly, because he was a chap called John Walker, who was a great character, had been at King's Cambridge, and was just a larger than life character, extremely funny, drank beer before rehearsals, which he wouldn't be able to get away with these days. He even once threw his shoe at somebody in the choir. He certainly wouldn't get away with that nowadays. We absolutely loved him and found him extremely funny. And I can remember singing, he hired, for a state school, he hired St. Paul's Cathedral and put on the Dream of Gerontius, hired an orchestra, managed to find the money. And that meant that we all had early experience of one of the greatest of pieces, Elgar, Dream of Gerontius. So all that led to me wanting to do it. And what an amazing man he was too.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, to get to sing sort of Dream of Gerontius at that sort of age, and you're experiencing that sort of large tenor on Take Me, incredible. Are there any other particular works that sort of stand out, any sort of other larger things?
Well, just before we go from that, the moment I remember was Go in the Name of Angels and Archangels, which is absolutely astonishing. And I couldn't believe it when I heard it. I was to be part of it in the middle of all that orchestra. But at home, we listened to a lot of Tchaikovsky. We listened to Bach quite a lot. So, you know, Brandenburg concertos and things, and absolutely adored those. But my father's favorite composers were Gershwin and Messiaen, believe it or not, and because of the rich chords used. And I got him interested in Messiaen because I came home and David Neal had played L'Ascension on the organ. We had an organ in church. State school went opposite to the church opposite with an organ in it, and it had those three which you might call discordant chords. And I took the record home and said, Dad, you've got to listen to this. And he listened to it and he said, I can't really make head or tail of it. It all sounds discordant. I said, listen to it again. And he did and loved it. And we in fact we had it for his memorial service 10 years ago. But so he loved Gershwin and Messiaen, and I will always remember his love of the Summertime of Gershwin with the end, which does that. I don't know if you know Summertime well enough to know those chords.
It's a sort of an immersion in two very different but similar kinds of music in the way it works with the sound world, rather than just pure melody. There's some sort of beef to the harmony underneath. Yeah, it's all people don't talk about harmony enough because it's not because it's difficult to teach and difficult to understand. It's really worth understanding it. I teach first year harmony at Queen's in Cambridge now, and I love it because they can understand it. Some of them haven't been taught it at school, but you need to catch up on that. And you know, it's a fantastic thing to do. Yeah. Did you do much then? I suppose moving on in your education, you then came to Durham. Did you do much harmony and counterpoint at Durham? I'm currently leading one of the or helping on one of the harmony and counterpoint modules at the moment, and as you say, some people come with no experience of it, but actually once they get into it, they find it one of the most enjoyable parts, getting inside that. Did you get involved in any of that when you were Yes, no, it was very good department, and indeed, and we were taught harmony and we did it, and but you see, I started off at Durham doing maths and physics, of course, and after my father, and it was clearly maths and physics I was going to do, but I sort of had a niggling thing that I wanted to. And when, I don't know if you still have it, but if you do maths, you have to go and choose your subsidiary. Well, if you do sciences, you had to go and choose your subsidiary subject, and you had to stand in a long queue in Grey College. And I remember standing in this queue, and I tell this to people about why you should really insist on what you know you want to do. And I stood in this queue, got to the front of it after an hour, and they said, "What subsidiary would you like to do?" I said, "I'd like to do music, please." And they said, "No, you can't." They look, there's the list. It's numerical maths, mechanics, blah, 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 statistics, probability. And I said, "Oh, I want to do music." "Well, sorry, you can't." "Okay, well, I'll do numerical maths then." Off I went down the stairs. Halfway down the stairs, I thought, no, I'm doing music. So I turned around and joined the back of the queue. Another hour to the front, said, "I want to change my subsidiary, please." They said, "Oh, yes, what?" "Well, I chose numerical." "Oh, you're the one that wanted music." I said, "Yes, I want music and I want to do subsidiary music." "Well, you can't." I said, "Why can't you?" And they said, "Because it doesn't timetable." Cheeky 19-year-old, I pointed at their files and I said, "Would you check it doesn't timetable, please?" And they furiously opened up and said, "Well, that fits and that fits and that fits, but we don't recommend it." And I said, "Music, please." And if I hadn't done that, just that little conversation when I put my foot down as a 19-year-old, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. Well, absolutely, all entirely worth it.
And I then needed to get a grant for an extra year because my father wouldn't have been able to afford to help me. And Arnold Bradford, who is still alive apparently, was the senior tutor, and he helped me find a grant for an extra year. I'm eternally grateful.
Wonderful. So you did, was it a first year of maths and physics and then 3 years of music?
Oh yes, I then went and did my subsidiary music, and we had a exercise to bring in, and Brian Primer, who was doing it, was a kind of harmony, but make up a piece with harmony in the style of Mozart. And he looked at me and he said, "This is very good. Would you like to change the music?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm doing maths and physics." But then that stayed with me for a year, and I changed and went back to the beginning and changed in my second year. And that year, I'd never been happier in my life. I didn't realize that it just, well, of course, now you think about it, and as a teacher, of course, I understand it. But it just made me more fulfilled and happy than I could imagine myself being to have chosen the right thing.
Always worth pursuing those things.
Sorry?
always worth pursuing those things, the things that you really want to do, the things that
but it's so easy to think that adults coming up, if you're a child, to think that an adult has got the answer. And as a teacher and an adult, I try and tell them, no, we haven't. You have a mind of your own, dearest.
And so alongside that then, were there any other sort of musical things you got involved in Durham, as well as sort of the maths, physics, music sort of degree-wise, academic-wise, any sort of broader choirs or conducting orchestras?
Well, actually, they wanted, we started the first choir at Van Mildert, I think, because a friend of mine, I've been trying to remember his name, but he came up to me and he said, Ralph, you seem to be the right person to do this. We need a choir. And I'll organize it. Perfect, I'll organize it, you conduct it. I like that. And so it doesn't usually happen. And so I said, yes, all right. And the first piece we did was Bach, Warket auf, 140, cantata 140. And actually, I think that was the first time I conducted a choir.
Really?
And then, and so that was lovely. I can't remember what accompanied us, but then later on, I applied to conduct the University Chamber Choir, and that was great. And then a friend seemed to have more money than me. We went to the pub one lunchtime, I'm afraid, sorry to tell you that. And he seemed to be able to spend more on beer than I. And I said, how come? And he said, I got a choral scholarship. Oh, what do you mean? I sing in the cathedral with the really? Yeah, why did you do one? So I took one and got it and spent 2 years singing in that glorious cathedral. And they gave me accommodation in the cathedral close, the college. So I spent 2 years at Van Mildert and then 2 years in the living in the college.
Excellent. That's an incredible experience. And I think it's 8 services a week, though, to be producing so much music and turning over so much repertoire is always incredible. And so I suppose that was the beginning at Van Mildert of a sort of long legacy of finding choirs and singing and conducting.
Yes.
Do you have any particular advice for sort of current students at Durham, how to make the most of their time musically, setting things up, getting involved, things like that?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of talk about vocational subjects and so on at the moment. Yes, okay, if you're going to be a brain surgeon, you need to study brain surgery. And if you're going to be a doctor, you need to know what the difference between a muscle and a vein is. But with loads of things, you can still do things which are going to make to expand you as a personality and are going to give you joy. And my catchphrase that I've invented is that education should give you a job and a joy. If the job and the joy are one and the same, which I'm grateful it has always been for me, then you're very fortunate. If not, have the job where you're good at, you're doing something you're good at, making money or something in the city, but then have something that gives you joy as well, and make sure you've got it. And you may need special courses in order to make the most of it, like music. So I think you should be thinking of your whole self. Don't just think of university as getting qualified with a degree. Think of your whole person, and that's how we should all. And I think there's a lot of progress we can make educationally. I've been talking to a friend who's developing an app for the teaching of maths, in little 3-minute nuggets. Well, I think the combination of this sort of thing, together with personal contact in tutorials and things, is the way forward. And I think the whole idea of a curriculum, the whole idea of boundaries of subject is going to disappear. And we're going to just be able to have a curriculum for every single person and doing exactly what they want. As I say, if they want to be a brain surgeon, then they've got to do loads of that. But, life's more complicated than just preparing everyone for a vocation.
Do you think that's getting more difficult now? Because I mean, there's a lot of sort of fuss in the recent days about the government cutting funding for art subjects by 50%. And I'm not going to push for a sort of political comment, but what sort of effect do you think that has, reducing the funding for art subjects, not just educationally, but even more broadly than that?
Well, you can ask me for a political point and a gay comment, because I think it's absolutely ghastly. The whole of the rest of the world looks at us educationally in this country, and we need to look at ourselves every now and then and see what we provide. And look, for example, let's take the little quirky thing of cathedral choirs, of which there are about 70 of them. And my brother is chairman of the Cathedral Music Trust, which helps to keep them on the rails, particularly with COVID and everything. And these children going, as you said, singing 8 services a week, children as young as 9 singing 8 services a week together with the practices. If it didn't exist, you wouldn't invent it. And yet not one of those children suffers educationally as a result of spending all that time. Quite the reverse. Every single one of them you talk to says it made my early life, and it was quite wonderful, and it's an essential part of it. Well, I came to that rather later, but I was a choral scholar in the cathedral, and I think we've got a lot of learning to do, and part of about education, and part of the learning is looking at ourselves and seeing what we do and seeing why it works and seeing how wonderful it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I started fairly late as well, but I also come through sort of cathedral music, and I've seen so many people benefit from it because, you know, that funding is there. And I suppose whenever we come to secondary education and higher education, that money needs to be there to provide people. But do you think that should be, you know, primarily coming under the government as a sort of state system like Germany, or more sort of private donors, the way the sort of US system works? Where should this money be coming from? Because it's, you know, it's essential for all sorts of you know, education, life. People who don't study as well benefit from it so much. Yeah,
well, ideally we all share it. I don't like saying the government should give it. I like saying we all share it, which amounts to the same thing, you know, that we all pay taxes. So every time we say the government should do it, we should imagine our taxes going up by a little bit. You know, that's the only logical way to do it. However, if the government doesn't do it, meaning if we don't all share it, then we should start getting private donors. And that's what I've done with founding the Pimlico Musical Foundation, for example, because I wanted to give the chorister type education to people who don't know about it and wouldn't apply to go and sing in a cathedral choir because they don't know the words crotchet and cassock and surplice. You know, those don't come into their vocabulary. So we get all of the children in the Pimlico schools, and there's quite a lot of, you know, they're not living in rich leafy squares like I am, you know, and giving them in their state primary schools, making sure they all get singing, and they do, then choosing the keenest, not the best, the keenest, to come and sing in the Pimlico Children's Choir, and then the keenest of those come and sing Evensong once a week. And by the way, not a single person since we started has said, surely this is Christian, isn't it? You shouldn't be doing something Christian. Look, I reply, if they did say that, but they never have, but if they did, they probably know they'd get as good as they gave. But I would say, look, the music of the Christian church over the years, the Christian church has produced so much good music that it is our duty to share it with everybody. So, you know, J.S. Bach, the greatest genius that has ever lived, in my view, wrote the Christian church. So we should share it. Anyway, Pimlico Musical Foundation, we do just that, and we sing it.
Yes, and you've been, you see, you've been uploading sort of videos and stuff during the pandemic of helping, you know, children learn how to sight read and all sorts of musical well, sort of techniques for performing, for singing, for playing instruments and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that, the sort of dissemination and democratization of music education that you've been?
Well, thank you. I have very strong views about, and I think I just mentioned that I've been speaking to a friend today about who's a very good mathematician, understands this sort of thing, who's working for a company that's producing an app that teaches maths in little 3-minute nuggets and has him online teaching and can have him in person. And I think that is the way forward for it, that we can do things in that sort of way. People talk about Zoom tiredness. I'm not tired of Zoom. I, apart from anything else, I like to be reminded by a little name under who I'm talking to. But and I don't mind seeing myself. Perhaps that's vain, but some people say they're tired of it. Well, I do think it's the way forward, and maybe I'm sure we're going to improve it and improve people's lot. However, I've got in my I did a virtual Evensong with about 1,000 people contributing, and then I did some ABBA songs because I think ABBA are superb, and I then did 8 hymns, chose 8 buildings and 8 places, and got people singing, and that's again another 1,000 people singing these hymns. And do go and look at it, because it's I'm very proud of it, and it's under the thing called the self-isolation choir. But we're just doing another one now of we're going to give to the royal family as a gift on the 10th of June, people singing Prince Philip's favorite hymn. And he was a student at the Royal Naval College in Greenwich, where I run the choir. The only, as you mentioned earlier, as Dave mentioned earlier, which is very kind, the only conservatoire chapel choir in the world. And we sing it. And we just recorded the foundation tape for it last night, the foundation recording. So we've got 1,300 people already signed up for that. That's self-isolation choir. They're doing loads more things.
That's incredible. How do you manage to reach so many people with this? There must be a sort of a strong team behind sort of reaching out to people, getting people involved. And
it's an excellent team. They have on their books, they have 6,000 people from all over the world. And I just got on to my friends and got them to play these foundation tracks on organs, or St. Paul's and Salisbury and Liverpool Cathedral, which is amazing. But also we do it with the Rodolfus Foundation, and so my sight reading videos guide people through the book I read about sight reading, and various anthems, which we get them all singing, and the virtual Evensong as well. And we just bring out a video from time to time of a kind of educational thing. And Rodolfus was the choral courses, which I started in 1980, and to tell people about choral scholarships and how you could get choral scholarships at all sorts of places like Durham Cathedral and Oxford and Cambridge, and to try and get as many people to do them as possible. And we get people together for a week and of intense singing together, and they make friends for life, of course. And people come back to me afterwards. The best comment I love getting is, "You changed my life." Fantastic. And it's always good music. We've started junior courses as well, 8 to 15-year-olds, and 8 to 15-year-olds. And my proudest moment was doing the Bach Magnificat. And you all know the Bach Magnificat's pretty difficult. Yeah. We take all comers, no auditions. We get the best coming and joining us, because we do good music and they want to do good music. And we get those who are inexperienced, and they very soon learn. And that's the wonderful thing about choral music.
Absolutely, everyone can do it. Do you think there's another side to this as well? I did a bit of work. I was a scholar for a foundation called the Sing for Pleasure a couple of years ago. Their aim is sort of to do that with conductors. So they take you right from the beginning, and they train up young conductors from beginner right the way to advanced. And in the beginning, you're learning to teach sort of rounds by rote to people who can't read music. And you've got in 10 minutes you've got people singing in harmony. And by the advanced courses, you're conducting chorus with orchestra. Do you think that the part of growing this sort of empire of music and singing and getting everyone involved, and that we need to be involved in that much more, in training the people who are training the singers, and getting people involved in that? Because one of the things that they say at the beginning is it would be foolish to put someone who's never played the clarinet in the middle of the LSO, and so why put someone who's never trained to conduct in front of an orchestra? And of course, it's one of those things you learn by doing. But do you think there's value to training up these conductors rather than throwing
absolutely
deep end,
yeah,
getting more of these going?
There certainly is. I had the good fortune when I left Durham, my brother was at King's Cambridge and had a word with David Wilcox, said, you haven't got a place for a volunteer. My brother wants to do his diploma of education, his PGCE. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, we have. So we had a quick audition. I nipped down there. And my brothers called me and said, whatever you're doing next weekend, drop it, because I've told him you're free on Saturday. And so I went down and auditioned and got it. And that was fantastic. And I was able to watch him for a year. So I, and the most renowned in those days choir director anywhere, 7 times a week, just watching him doing it. And God, I learned so much from him. And then my first job was director of music at a school with very little music, and I had to start it from nothing. So I then had to build it up. And I'm very pleased I did that, actually, because I learned all of the things you had to do in a school. Or I typed letters myself on an old typewriter, you know, and did all the bills and all the timetables, and but started a choir from nothing at that school, and we sang an anthem every week for all my 5 years at that. And I'm pleased I did that to start with, and then the rest was delegation, you know, as the years went by. Good old delegation, which was fantastic.
Yeah,
but yeah, we can learn a lot. And on choral courses, I have a session every single course when we say who would like to conduct, and we give them help. I show them how to do it, and of course I thought I knew all about it, and halfway through my career when I was at Eton, I got in touch with Colin Metters at the Academy and said, I'd like to just brush up on my orchestral conducting. And I thought rather arrogantly, well, this won't make any difference on my choral conducting, because I know all about that, of course. And I went to him for these lessons in orchestral conducting, and he was brilliant, and I learned so much from him, and it transformed my choral conducting as well. So I'm very pleased I did, and I would encourage everybody who would like to do it to learn how to do it. Any great skill can be learned from someone who's done it before. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. You touched a little bit there on sort of the getting things going in your work in schools teaching. How do you see the music in schools working whenever you're starting things up from scratch? Is there a balance to strike amongst sort of curricular and extracurricular or co-curricular music, between getting things going around the classroom and getting things going in the classroom?
Well, I don't think there should be the term extracurricular, and I don't think there needs to be now that we can have, there needed to be before, but now that we have so much more flexibility because we've learned how to do things online, and I don't think we're being radical enough. We can be far more radical in everything, and I'm not just saying this so that we can squeeze more music in there, but we will be able to, because we'll be able to get people to do musical things at all times of day, not squeezed in after school. Sport could happen in the afternoon or in the morning, because people a lot of time would be at screens, but it's going to be better than screens. We'll have some sort of 3D arrangement, and you know, somebody's going to invent something great like that. But also we mustn't lose a single teacher in this process. The teachers will be with us to encourage us, set things, give us goals, praise us, but the nitty-gritty is done online with little things. I mean, I do Duolingo and learn German, and I've managed to do 146 days, one after the other, and it's the skill of the app that makes me do that. Now, surely we can devise something like that for children and students, and so that will enable the thing I mentioned before of a job and a joy. So we train people for a job and a joy. And I've never, you talk about the balance between curricular and extracurricular. I obviously don't like the term at all. It's all young people and learning. But even that isn't, we learn as we get older. I learn every day something. But I do believe that that everything should work together, and we shouldn't think of one thing squeezing out another thing. The person who should not be squeezed is the student, and the student should be there to expand as he wants and not squeezed from one direction or the other by curricular requirements. Now, it's been necessary up till now, but now it isn't, because we've got such amazing flexibility. So come on, everyone, come on, technicians, show us how we're going to do it. We've got, I'd say, about a quarter of the way there, and we've got so much more to go. But I think educationalists, and I don't like that term either, teachers should have an ideal beaming, shining above them of what it should be. And we can't get there yet, but gradually we will. And that's of everybody doing what suits them most, and us keep monitoring them very carefully so that we know what they're able to do and know what they're going to be able to produce from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology and the things we've learned from the pandemic will play an enormous part in that, and the people developing it will play an enormous part in that as well. I suppose this is, it's going to bring about large advances in sort of education, but in terms of sort of broader music making and a lot of collaborative music making, a lot of the excitement is done in person with audiences and working in the same room and things like that. Do you think technology will play a role in the development of that as well? Well,
it's one categorizer. I don't like the categorization of creative and non-creative things, because if one gets a theorem, proves a theorem in maths, one is being creative. Don't tell a mathematician that he's not being creative when he's come across a new way of solving an equation. Similarly, when I'm practicing scales, I'm not being creative. So that's a bad categorization. But a good categorization is into collaborative activities and non-collaborative activities. And Matt Ridley, the writer on evolution, and well, he writes more than that, but he's brilliant, has been a great influence on me. And I love the idea of human collaboration and why we do it, and why we love doing things with choirs. Yesterday, I did a live broadcast, and we got together, 12 of us, in the old Royal Naval College Chapel. And for the first time for ages, we were absolutely together in the choir stalls, distanced, obviously. And we were able to make music together. And it was a joy. That's all you can say about it. And so, and similarly, when people play games together, team games and things, they find joy in that collaboration. And when we work together, we find joy. And that's why we need the workplace. And, so collaborative activities, but then certain things we do, sitting at a screen, learning stuff, or sitting at a book, learning it. That is the categorization we should be going for, not creative and non-creative.
No, absolutely. And a lot of your work has been bringing about these sorts of foundations, like the choral courses, the Pimlico Musical Foundation, and the Inner Voices as well, which you conduct. What's the sort of process for getting these things going? Do you just have the idea one day and think, here it is, this exists? How do you go about sort of creating one of these from nothing and building it up to sort of such a high, sort of internationally renowned level, I suppose?
Well, yes, thank you. In all cases, it's been a question of a little idea comes into my mind, and it sort of winds round and round and won't go away, and keeps mentioning itself to me. It's a bit like composing. I improvise at the piano a lot, and I compose, and I will suddenly run to the piano because I've got an idea, and I'll play it and then write it down. But so it just gestates, and then some opportunity comes along. So, for example, Pimlico Musical Foundation. I'm in Pimlico right now, and I love it. I love being in the middle of London, unlike some people. And I just needed somebody to help me with it. And a new vicar came to St. Gabriel's Church, and I thought, you are just right, because he used to be an accountant, he really good administrator, very keen on getting this sort of thing going. So I put it to him one day, just sitting in this room, and he loved it. And now it's because he's a much better administrator and sort of accountant, well, certainly accountant than I am. And so he knows how to put systems in place. But as a person who has ideas and starts things, you should never think that you get free from admin, because you simply don't. You always have things to do and that you must do, and get it done now. Do it now was I think my father's thing, just do it now, and my mother's. So that was very important. So then, but we now have 8 teacher singers, as they're called. And I don't like the idea of singers being paid to sing and then going away. There are enough of them to find people who can teach and love teaching and are good with people. So we have 8 singers like lay clerks, but they're teachers. And so they teach the children. So that 18 of them sing Evensong. It started again yesterday, Wednesdays. So we do Evensong Wednesday evenings. And then Inner Voices was, when I left Eton, an ex-pupil who's head of music now at West London Free School said, you said when you leave Eton, I never use the ghastly word retire, when you leave Eton, except financially, when you leave Eton, you said you'd like to do some work in state schools. I said, yes. He said, I've got a job for you. I said, oh, thank you. What's that? And he said, I'm forming a choir from 12 schools in the southwest of London. And we're taking all comers, no auditions, everyone that wants to, everyone that's enthusiastic. And we're going to form a choir which rehearses on Tuesdays, and I'd like you to conduct it. And I said, perfect, thank you very much. And that was in about 2012. And so we're nearly on our 10th anniversary. And we sang Evensong in St. Paul's. And we did, Take Him Earth for Cherishing of Howells?
Yes.
One of the most difficult pieces in the repertoire, but he was so keen to do it. He said, how can we do Take Him Earth? And I told him we did have a few extras in to help, but they loved it because it's good music.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can imagine, or I can't even imagine just how inspiring that is for young kids to be able to go and sing in St. Paul's and sing. I mean, particularly music of such a high quality and at such a high standard at that age.
Yes.
And it must have been incredible. But how do you inspire them in the first place? Because quite often you get these programs set up and it's quite difficult to get people involved in the first place. And once they're involved, they fall in love with it and they do it for the rest of their lives, much like I have, I suppose. But it can occasionally be difficult to get those sorts of younger children in schools to come and sing. Maybe they don't want to sing with their friends. They're embarrassed or...
Yes. Well, I've always found it okay. I've never found it difficult to do that. But when they first, Ed Watkins, who's a brilliant teacher, who's my old pupil and who runs music at West London Free School, went round to all his friends who were teachers, music teachers in other schools in Southwest London, and said, just send us your keenest, who'd like to sing. And we had 40 in the choir straight away. And I didn't muck about doing music that I thought they liked, and the kind of music they've heard. That's a really terrible basis for, you should do what you think is good music. And okay, what I think is good music differs from what you think is good music. And it differs from what she thinks and he thinks. But all in all, it gradually goes along the pipe, and gradually purifies until we see what the consensus is about what is good music. In the meantime, it's up to each of us to choose the best possible music. And so, I think that the Beatles have produced some of the best music. What about this moment? Amazing. So, but we did with them, we did a magical Weep, O Mine Eyes. I think it's by Bennett or something, Weep, O Mine Eyes. Absolutely beautiful. And so no messing around, straight into it. And they loved it.
Yeah, I saw an interview that Paul McCreesh did recently, and he'd said, you know, it's important to put young people at the heart of the professional project, and it's important to set the bar high by doing projects like these with, you know, great music at a high standard, and sort of push them to produce the best music that they can, and then they will treasure it and continue it. Are there any sort of projects that you've done that really stand out, where you've had that sort of high quality of music, high quality of you know, of music production, and the engagement from young people? Are there any sort of three highlights that you might choose?
Well, there are so many highlights, but I will just choose the first that comes to my mind first. Well, of course, there's Taking Mirth and Cherishing with the Inner Voices. There's Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony with Eton First Orchestra, which was the last piece we did a symphony every term. Amazing. It really is like a specialist music school. And may I just put in as well that anyone can go there and learn if they're good enough, because there are scholarships for musicians, and really generous scholarships for musicians. So don't let anyone think that it's the rich only.
Absolutely. I am one of those people that managed to grab myself one of those, and it properly changed my life. So just to completely back up what you said, it's, you know, the money's there. Go and take the opportunities.
Where were you at school?
I was at St Malachy's College in Belfast, and then for sixth form, I was given a full bursary and scholarship to Winchester College.
Winchester.
Yes. So I was very lucky, and you know, as you say, the funding's there. If you've got the drive, go for it.
Yeah, do it. I've got some amazing stories about people coming to Eton who just couldn't believe that they were going to this place that they'd heard of in the news, you know, and just and relished it. And you can do it. And we got quite a lot of publicity for that at Eton, for people doing that sort of thing. But I suppose everything I used to do with College Chapel Choir at Eton, I remember fondly. And I can't remember a particular piece that stood out, but for accomplishments and things, I suppose the Matthew Passion when I was at Uppingham, it's, you know, choose good music and they'll love it. Or on a junior choral course, the Bach Magnificat, and we got an orchestra in to do that, and that was stunning, and they completely loved it. And of course, actually, the Bach Magnificat's short enough to be able to, so you can do a lot of work on it, and it is difficult, but it's worth it. Every note is worth it.
No, absolutely. And are there any concerts that stand out for sort of the funny moments? Anything that's, you know, not quite gone to plan, a soloist forgetting their trousers or something like that?
Well, I won't mention any names, but I did have somebody turn up to do a concert who was drunk, and he was leading a major role, and I knew he had a propensity for that, and I tried to get him to come to supper beforehand to make sure that he didn't, and he just didn't bother, you know, and so I managed to get through, and he was fine. Actually, I've thought of another one on tour in America, where there was a caretaker. You know, when you go into churches, you usually get a really good caretaker or verger who helps you, but we got one who was so difficult, or just didn't want to help us, and didn't want to be part of it, and wanted us to just get out as soon as possible. And as we were finishing the concert, he'd been very difficult, but as we were finishing, we could hear him doing this, you know, meaning, come on, get on with it, I want to go home. But we sang America the Beautiful, which sends Americans into tears, you know, it's so America the Beautiful. And as we sang America the Beautiful there, we heard him suddenly. We were in the little vestibule where he was as well, waiting to get rid of us. And we sang America the Beautiful very, you know, heartrendingly. And we heard him say, "Oh, shit." He burst into tears. And he was then our friend after that. It was fantastic.
Well, it's another great example of music sort of, you know, perking people up, changing attitudes, and the rest of that.
Yeah.
Where is your favorite place that you've been because of music? I'm sure you must have done some incredible tours. You've just spoken about the USA there. Is there anywhere else that sort of really magical that you ended up going because of singing, because of music, orchestras?
Well, we've had I've had 6 tours to Japan. I did a workshop once at in Taiwan, and I've done several courses in Shanghai and America too. Wonderful reception we get. And singing King's Choir when I was a student, I just remember going out in processions singing Psalm 150 to this chant, wonderful, with a wonderful treble descant. The end of the concert, and a woman just next to me in the audience, packed place, a woman just looked at everybody and burst into tears. And that, we all saw that, the whole choir saw that, and it really made it for us. And you know, why does music make you cry? Why does music make you, even memory of it makes me choke sometimes. I can't explain that. And also another thing I can't explain, which I love, is what is the evolutionary advantage of somebody being able to play a Beethoven piano concerto off by heart all the way through? Where does that come from? And I know, and I may be corrected by people that know more about this than I do, but I know that we had a time in our evolution when it was an advantage to be bipedal, to be on 2 legs. And it was such an advantage that the brain change, the gene change, the genetic mutation that happened led to a much larger brain. So we've got a much larger brain than we need. Now, I've probably got the details wrong there, but I like the thought that we've got extra brain capacity, which is just there to do what we like with, and that we can do music is an astonishing privilege. And so many people love it, and it's my duty as a teacher to share it with as many as possible.
Well, absolutely. The more brain capacity we have, the more music we can enjoy and remember and love. On that note of sort of music being able to really move you, I find myself, there's nothing better than when you get an Evensong with sort of the perfect music list of everything you want to sing, and you come out at the end
absolutely
just in tears and having forgotten that you sung any of it because it's been so good. So if you could have an ideal Evensong, what do you think it would be? If we start off with a building, choose a favorite building to sing Evensong in.
King's Cambridge. It's not the greatest place to actually sing in. It's hard to sing in. St. John's, Cambridge is easier and nicer to sing in because there's an apse and you can sing there and you can hear yourself, and and I love rehearsing in St. John's. I do it a lot because we have a choral course there. But King's, you just have to look up and it just takes your breath away. It's absolutely amazing. So King's, Cambridge. I'm afraid that tips Durham. I love Durham, but it just goes one better than Durham.
And then if we take an introit, so in King's Cambridge, your introit might be.
Oh, I just remember I hadn't sung the simple little piece "Almighty God" by Thomas Ford, and it was in our first Evensong that I sang in, and. We did it in the broadcast. We did it in the recording for the broadcast, which is going out on the 1st of December. Yeah, the day before yesterday. So excellent. That's beautiful. So there's your introit.
Lovely. A set of responses?
Well, I love Bernard Rose and Philip Radcliffe and Richard Shepherd, but probably the straightforward Bird. just seems to work somehow. I can't say why. It's just got beautiful balance and shape and symmetry, and yeah, unbelievable.
Excellent. And we'll assume we're doing the 15th evening of Psalms. Do you have a particular evening or a particular chant?
Yes. And the chant that we used in Durham Cathedral, I remember wrongly, I know I do, but I arrogantly think my version is better. And it's this. And then it's a quadruple chant. So you get the Gloria like this, of first inversion dominant seventh, which I love. Might as well finish it now. Diminished seventh. Yeah, so 78. Yeah. And then I went to King's after that, and I won't play the whole of that one, but we got a completely different. But I remember it. And for the 15th evening. But the 15th evening tells such a wonderful story. It takes 20 minutes, and everyone says, "Oh, 15th evening," and I say, "Wow, 15th evening."
always my favorite evening of the month when it comes around. There's so much to do with it. Canticles then, if this is a contentious and tough one, is it going to be Hyles?
Well, of course it could be, yes. And my brother ran last night or the night before last a Cathedral Music Trust quiz in which they had excerpts from great canticles, and they just had and that's it. We needed to know. They all got it right. But actually, I think probably I love all the house ones, but probably the one I would choose.
Dyson and D.
Dyson and D. Good old Dyson and D. Yeah.
Yes, it's. I think they used it for one of the intercollegiate college evensongs in Durham, I think just before the pandemic, and the noise at the end of that World Without End with 150 singers sort of, incredible.
And it's to get technical, it's just knowing when near the end of a piece to use the subdominant. There's the subdominant.
Yeah,
beautiful, fantastic.
No, it's wonderful.
But Howells, I adore Howells as well. There's so many good ones, and actually Stanford. People dismiss Stanford because it's simple, and it's easy to sing. Well, that's the skill. He made it easy to sing. Great stuff.
Yes, less for the organist.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then to finish off an anthem.
Gosh, well, obviously there's Take Him Earth for Cherishing, and I do, I run the choir at Queen's Cambridge as well now, and so I'm up to Cambridge 3 times a week, and they choose the music for me. I just go in and conduct it, which is amazing, and they've chosen Take Him Earth, and so I can say, look, you chose this, you guys, we're going to get it right. So that yes, Take Him Earth, or perhaps Luigi Sante Temnum of Balfour Gardner, or God is Gone Up with a triumphant shout of Finzi, but when we finish this, I'll think, oh, why didn't I say X, Y, and Z?
So many good ones to choose from, such exciting repertoire and inspiring stuff to sing. And I suppose to really finish off, Evensong would never be complete without a pint. Where is the sort of, if you could move your perfect pub next to King's College Chapel and you could finish Evensong and head straight there, where would be your favourite pub from anywhere in the world?
Well, it's a long time since I've been there, but the one that springs to mind is the Wickham Arms, which you probably know or shouldn't know if you're a boy there, because that's where lay clerks very happily go after Evensong, and it's a wonderful place. And my sister and brother-in-law lived there, and I love Winchester, and got the Shakespeare. I used to really enjoy. We used to go to the Shakespeare in Durham, and fantastic. And in those days, they've removed it now. I went in to see if they'd still got it. But there was a bell on the wall, so there was a room where you could go in where there was no bar, and just there were lovely, comfortable seats. And if you wanted a pint, you just rang the bell, and in they came and served you. They don't do that now, which is a shame. But then Cambridge or Eagle, wonderful. We used to have some wonderful times in the Eagle. So there you go. I've given you 3.
Well, I'll make sure to plan a trip around all of them. But I think we're just about out of time. But thank you so much for joining us this evening and for talking to me. It's been really, really interesting to hear everything you've done, and really inspiring to hear that there's more to come. That there's so much excitement and growth to happen to music in the country, and a lot of it at the hands of yourself. So on behalf of the college, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, and thank you, Durham, for giving me the start and enabling me to do what I really wanted to, which was music.